e-tolls per se as a revenue collection scheme works in many parts of the world. So it's not the technology or the mechanisms that we're objecting to. What our problem is with e-tolls in South Africa is that government had introduced a scheme that was grossly overpriced. First of all, it was trying to fund a road construction project that was between 2 and 3 times what it should have been. That project cost us nearly 18 billion rand. It shouldn't have cost us anything more than 7 to 8 billion at the most, probably less. So we were funding an expensive road project, and the mechanism or the scheme of e-tolling was born in sin for this reason. The project or the tender, we were told, was given by SANRAL to ETC or CUPS Trafficom, the electronic tolling company that they set up here, at just over 6.4 billion rand. When we learnt, though, later on, the scheme was actually given to them, the contract was signed at 9.8 billion rand. So it was excessively increased, and we could see that the funding mechanisms, administration costs were nearly 30%, whereas around the world, these schemes, the admin part of it costs between 7 and 11%. So this was a scheme that was going to make somebody a lot of money. It was overpriced, it was not good for the citizens of this country, and so we realized that we couldn't just sit back and do nothing, we had to go and fight it. We didn't just go in guns blazing. Right in the beginning, we engaged with SANRAL for a number of years, since 2010 and throughout 2011, once we had learnt about the scheme. And we met with SANRAL, we engaged with them on alternatives, on options, and wanted to know why they had a dismal public engagement process. Lo and behold, they decided to just forge ahead, regardless of the fallout from society across all sectors, the unions, politicians, civil society at large, businesses. And so there was a ministerial committee that was set up, but that was only after we decided to go to court. And it's sad that you have to go to court to challenge government in its decisions. And while we won the interdict and that set aside the initial launch date, the ministerial committee, the ministerial advisory committee under Kgalema Motlanthe, was set up to really start now this very late engagement with civil society. And that came to nothing. It was a farce, quite frankly. The courts then found the whole scheme, the decision to try and set it aside, very technical, and couldn't do so because the money had been borrowed and the roads had been built. So that was fine, but what the courts did do after we challenged us through the legal process was it gave us an opportunity to bring a collateral challenge, to challenge government if and when anybody was summoned on the basis that could they participate, was the scheme introduced fairly, were the tariffs correct at the time, and with all of these factors we realized that OUTA had a new role to play on this e-toll decision. Besides informing citizens of their rights to stand strong against the very bad and irrational government policy, we had to take a decision now to defend civil society, and that's what we did. And anybody who was summoned, we decided that if they gave us the mandate, we would defend them in court. And we went down this road with over 3,000 summonses that SANRAL had issued, and not one of them reached court because effectively SANRAL could do nothing about this. They couldn't enforce, and that was OUTA's challenge and stance, and still is to this day. So what we do know is that infrastructure doesn't fall out of the sky. We have to pay for it. Civil society has to pay for it in some way or another. We realized that the easiest mechanism that government had was to do what they had already been doing with all of SANRAL's non-e-tolled or non-tolled projects or portfolios. And that was to fund road upgrades of this nature through tax allocations. Now, taxes are collected by government and treasury in a number of ways, and the fuel levy is one of those taxes. It's the 4th highest tax that government receives besides VAT and company tax and PAYE. And if government needed the money desperately at the time to fund this 18 billion rand overpriced project, it could have done so and settled these bonds over 20 years, including interest, with an income of about 10 cents on the fuel levy. That's about 2.2 billion rand a year. We suggested that at the time, and they ignored us at the time, but they still went ahead and increased the fuel levy, as they do every year and have been doing up until last year. So they increased the fuel levy from that period when the ETOL decision was made to now by over R2.50 per litre. So the 10 cents is in there. They've got the funds. And in fact, to prove that, SANRAL has been receiving grants from Treasury to the tune of about 22 billion rand since the ETOL decision was made. Anyway, so essentially government has financed the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project through government grants, through allocations to SANRAL. So we say nothing needs to change. They've got the money through the fuel levies. So the mechanisms have already been put in place. We asked government to consider those at the time instead of the ETOL decision. They chose not to, and they made the wrong decision. It's now time to reverse that decision.